Welcome to Hyperplay. By downloading incredible apps like Winlator and Gamehub, you can play phenomenal high-end PC games on your Retroid Pocket 5, and we're going to show you the type of games you can enjoy. Firstly, I want to give credit to the other trailblazers in this area and give you the benefit of their findings. For instance, ROM Roadshow, who has been able to get Fallout 3 working absolutely beautifully on the Retroid Pocket 5 and the Flip 2. Of course, they share the same processor, the Snapdragon 865. And you can see what they have managed to achieve here with FPS, at least in the menus and loading screens, in triple figures. And the gameplay looks pretty good too. And the settings are coming up now. We'll leave full links to ROM Roadshow's video and all the other videos that we highlight in this show. But you can see that ROM Roadshow used Gamehub, which should always be your first port of call. If you are happy to use Gamehub, then that should be your first port of call because it sets up the containers for you. And this setup is particularly interesting because ROM Roadshow uses a launcher file. And to do that, you need to go into the container desktop setting in Gamehub and then find your launcher and set up Fallout 3 this way, and this might be useful for other games and not just Fallout 3. Indeed, every PC game emulated in this video came with its own challenges, so if you're serious about emulating PC games on Android, then we urge you to watch all of it, because something unique that was important to emulate one of our games might also be important when you come to emulate your game. Yeah, it's a long video, but we're dropping tips all the way through it, and we wouldn't want you to miss anything that could be useful to you. Anyway, back to ROM Roadshow and his bespoke Fallout 3 launcher. If you wanted to see these settings in real time, then we've sped these up by 2 times, so you can just slow down the footage here or pause it and you'll be able to see what ROM Roadshow did. And not only did ROM Roadshow get Fallout 3 working beautifully, they also got Crysis Remastered playing fluidly at high 20 FPS in the open world sections, and the Retroid Pocket 5, or the Flip 2 in this case, but it amounts to the same thing, do a fine job of getting smooth gameplay, even at FPSs slightly less than 30 frames per second. And again, here are ROM Roadshow's excellent settings. Again using Gamehub, and it should be noted that Crysis 3 Remastered will also work very nicely on the Retroid Pocket 5. Just give that a quick search in YouTube and you'll see our old friend Retro Handhelds 24, who'll crop up in a moment, has got Crysis 3 Remastered working very nicely. But these are the settings for the original Crysis Remastered. Not a game we know particularly well, we're not big shooty shooters. Someone who is a big shooty shooter is our old friend Montotech, and he's an increasingly big noise in the YouTube emulation world and always worth a listen. We'll link his video on how you can get Fallout New Vegas working lickety-split on your Retroid Pocket 5. He was delighted, and I'm sure you will be too. Subscribe to all these guys, they're absolutely fantastic. They've done amazing work and they're very entertaining to watch, especially Montotech's weekly news videos. Superbly produced and always informative. He really knows his stuff. And another man coming up who knows his stuff is Jacek Rusin. Jacek's built his channel up from zero, focusing on budget retro gaming emulation handhelds, and he's recently reached a good subscriber milestone, and he celebrated by getting GTA 5, Grand Theft Auto 5, running absolutely flawlessly on his Retroid Pocket 5. Now if you want to go and look at loads of games being tested on the Retroid Pocket 5 and other systems, then Jacek is your man. He works very hard indeed and produces superb gameplay videos like this. GTA 5, the legendary, the much sought after. I will link Jacek's video below and you will get the inside scoop on how you can heist or hoist GTA 5 onto your Retroid Pocket 5. Well over 40 frames a second here, woof. Now an important thing to note when using Winlator or Gamehub and emulating these high-end PC games on your Android device like your Retroid Pocket 5 is don't be fooled by the high FPS that you'll get in the menu screens and the loading screens and so on, and even some of the interiors. You'll be getting very good steady FPSs in buildings, in tunnels, in dungeons and so on. It's when you get into these open world areas that's when you really find out whether the RP5 has got the chipset chops to produce decent frames per second for these high-end games. And if it doesn't, you've always got the option of going into the settings and tweaking things. We have got some special tips later that will show you that even when you can't get high FPS through the settings, there is still a way. You can still find a fantastic miracle cure and get your FPS sky high with a couple of our tricks, so stay tuned for those. Now, something Jacek found when he was setting up GTA 5 on GameHub is that when it came to auto-configure the container for you, it downloaded GTA 5 settings, a file that sorts everything out and makes everything tickety-boo immediately out of the box. Now, this might be something we'll be seeing more of on GameHub, which would be absolutely fantastic. So not only configuring the container for you the best it can, but downloading bespoke settings specifically for that game to give you extra tweaks and extra performance. Obviously, it's because GTA 5 is such a beast in terms of popularity, but that is great to see, and something we hope will become commonplace in this area. And now we do come to our old friend Retro Handhelds 24, another excellent channel. He has a phenomenal array of emulation devices, all the way up from your most basic handheld budget device up to your biggest Ioneos. He is a true collector and aficionado, and he loves tinkering and getting the games running perfectly, like Halo 3 here on the Flip 2, which, again, will play exactly the same on the Retroid Pocket 5. Any of the games in the Master Chief Halo collection will work a treat. It's just he happened to go for this one. So, playing at a slightly reduced resolution, but that looks absolutely fine on this screen, same screen as on the Retroid Pocket 5 as well. So you can get a true idea of the quality, and superb FPS up near 60. If not higher, and here are Retro Handhelds 24 settings for Halo 3. Now, as we say, many of these games will require you to drop the resolution to 960 by 544, but such is the quality of the Retroid Pocket 5 screen, the best screen in all of gaming, that there is very little discernible drop-off going from 720p to 960 by 544. So don't be afraid to reduce those resolutions to bump up your frames per second and get a smoother performance. And talking of smooth performance, we come to it at last. The raison d'etre behind this video, the chief inspiration, yes, little known YouTuber Naro Dokaios playing Final Fantasy VII Remake on his Retroid Pocket 5. We couldn't believe it, but could we get it working on our Retroid Pocket 5? Yes, of course we could. Now, before anyone gets too sniffy about that little FPS counter at the bottom left, bear in mind that over 20 frames per second for Final Fantasy VII Remake as a first attempt at emulating it on your Retroid Pocket 5 is pretty good. And of course, you can only go up from there. So check out the opening movie, the cinematic to Final Fantasy VII Remake playing on our Retroid Pocket 5, and you'll see that our frames per second go up to a very hearty 90 plus. Now, when we embarked upon our FF7 Remake emulation journey, we wanted our FPS to soar as high in the sky as this eagle glides over Gaia. But if you keep tweaking the settings in search of ever higher and higher FPS like we did, you will run into stability issues, namely stuttering, as the FPS can vary wildly between the aforementioned mid-20 frames per second and high 90s, and also crashes. Yup, if you are really pushing the system to the max, it is going to whine and splutter out, and hard crashes have been, unfortunately, something we've encountered when pushing for higher FPS. So there is something to be said for capping the frames per second and choosing settings that offer greater stability and performance. That said, you cannot deny the beauty of this opening movie of Final Fantasy VII Remake on our Retroid Pocket 5. And you can see those frames per second ticking along at about 80 now. And this is on GameHub, and we will show you the settings a little later. But first, let's have a look at Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade running on Winlator CMod version 13.1.1. Yep, so here we are with Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade on the Retroid Pocket 5 running through Winlator CMod v13.1.1, and we've got the FPS capped at 30 frames per second. Why would we do this when we can get higher FPS? Because, as you may have noticed when we were running the intro through GameHub at an uncapped frame rate, it looked good, but frankly, it looks better here when the FPS is capped at a steady 30 frames, because it is steady. It's not juddering and jarring and stuttering a tiny bit. If you go back and watch the earlier footage of the intro that we showed running through GameHub, you will see that it does not look as smooth as we're getting here on Winlator, albeit at a much lower FPS. It's because the frames are steady. And here you can see the flower girl getting high on life, and it's all looking very glorious. It's not all high-grade Mako and roses though, because as this intro scene plays out, when we jump to the train section coming into the Mako reactor, you will see that the game nearly comes to a juddering halt. Certainly the FPS drops all the way down to 1 frame per second, but it doesn't crash. Yeah, a lot of people aren't going to like that at all. The game doesn't crash. We'll say that for Winlator CMod 13.1.1, but there are huge slowdowns and FPS dips. Now in Winlator CMod 13.1.1, just like the other Winlators, you can go and tweak the settings in your containers and so on, but remember that you can't change the compatibility layer, so you're stuck with whichever Proton or Wine version you went for, and that can make a big difference FPS wise. So if you're happy to GameHub, then start with GameHub. The big benefit of Winlator CMod v13.1.1 is its controller support. It is superb for switching between Bluetooth controllers and your onboard controllers on your device. So bear that in mind. If you do want to consoleize your RP5 or your other Android device, then CMod may be the best way to go. We have, however, had good success with Bluetooth controllers on GameHub for Final Fantasy VII Remake. So enter Cloud, and unfortunately CMod's still chugging along slightly at 15 frames per second. Again, perfectly playable and running surprisingly smooth despite the low FPS. In fact, that has been a common theme in our testing of FF7R Remake, that even at low FPS it still runs smoothly, which can't be said for another game we're going to show you later. So that was CMod v13.1.1, fine so far as it goes, but GameHub is where it is at for us and Final Fantasy VII Remake. Because here we are in the Mako reactor about to set our bomb and engage in the first big boss battle, and we're happily trucking along at high 20 frames per second, and yep, it looks absolutely beautiful. Let's see how we do in the big battle against that scorpion shooty guy. And here we are, the first big test of GameHub's credentials for running the big boss battles in Final Fantasy VII Remake, and we are over 20 frames per second. And it's playing smoothly, and we're going up often into the high 20s, totally engrossed in this battle. We are much more turn-based JRPGers, and the action elements to Final Fantasy VII are completely new to us, so you can see we took a bit of a pounding. We had to concentrate, but it never once felt like we weren't playing a high FPS RPG. Everything seemed seamless. There was no stuttering, lag or latency, and had such a good time in this boss battle, which I must admit I only just about scraped through by the skin of Cloud's dazzling white pearly dentures. Now I know, because it's happened already, that there are going to be plenty of people in the comments scoffing at FPS, occasionally in the low 20s, but you watch the footage yourself and you tell me whether it looks good. Bear in mind this is a big hectic boss battle in a big arena, with the GPU having to work extra hard. It all looks fabulous to me, and for my money it's a miracle that it's playing so well on the little old Retroid Pocket 5. So how did we get here? We need some settings tips. Okay, let the settings tips begin, because here we are inside GameHub and we're going straight into the game settings and the general menu. Going to pause the video here because there are 4 very important aspects to this part. And game resolution, we do recommend playing the high-end PC games at 960 by 544 in terms of resolution. Actually, for Final Fantasy VII Remake, you can't go lower than 1280 by 720, so you're going to be playing it at 720p, so that's fine. But as a matter of course, we suggest going for 544p as shown. Now, such is the sheer quality of the image that the Retroid Pocket 5 OLED screen puts out, you should have no qualms at all in other games that allow it in dropping to 960 by 544 resolution. Your game will still look great and will get a serious uptick in FPS, unless you capped it to 30 frames per second like we have here with Metaphor. The only time you might come a cropper at 960 by 544 is if the game is particularly text heavy and that text is minuscule, but even then, with the sharpening option, the high resolution settings in GameHub and also now in Winlator, you can bump up the resolution inside the game. So yeah, 960 by 544 should be the default for high-end PC games. The next very important setting on this page is the command line down at the bottom. Essentially, for every big PC game you're trying to emulate on Retroid Pocket 5, you want to type -DX11 as shown, and without getting too technical, that means you are saying to the computer to go ahead and use DirectX 11. It's not a minus, as in a don't do, it's a yes, do. So yes, -DX11 for all big PC games. And lastly, for this page, you want to have launch in windowed mode close, as in don't launch in window mode. Only turn this back on if, for instance, the game loads and only a quarter of the screen or so is showing, and then sure, by all means, turn on windowed mode. That's because if you launch in windowed mode, you get worse FPS. But it is sometimes essential, otherwise the game does load funny. So just try it without launching in windowed mode and see how you go there. Now moving on to the compatibility page on the GameHub menu, and remember this applies to all your big hitting PC games, not just Final Fantasy VII Remake. You can see here we've opted for Wine 9.16, but you can actually change that, and you can change that after you started playing the game. You can change it any time between Wine and Proton. And without getting too technical, recent advancements in Proton means that Proton 10 can now harness much more of the architecture of an Android system and gain big FPS boosts. But again, that comes at the cost of stability, because Proton 10 hasn't been out for a long time and it's not particularly stable. So yes, you may see great FPS, but that'll be at the cost of occasional crashes. So this is a real feather in the cap of GameHub compared to Winlator, because in Winlator you can't swap between Wine 9.16 and Proton 9 and Proton 10 and so on. Once you've created your container, it is fixed, whereas in GameHub you can change it on the hoof while you're playing your game to your heart's content. Bear in mind that if you do change your compatibility layer around, you're liable to lose your save, which is why you should install AJ Prefix in every container. AJ Prefix is a simple to install program that you install in the container desktop and enables you to save your save game files anywhere you want. Otherwise they get caught in the container itself, which you cannot access through your My Files option or any other file browser you care to mention. AJ Prefix instructs your game to always save your save game files somewhere safe. So in, for instance, your main storage download folder, so you can always access them. With AJ Prefix, you'll always be able to access your saves no matter which app you're using. GameHub, Winlator, Winlator Bionic Ludashi, Winlator CMod. You can tinker with all those at the same time while still getting back to the same save of the game you're currently playing. It also means you'll be able to download PC save files from the internet and use those. These save game files for Final Fantasy Remake are highly recommended from this website. Just be sure to use pop-up blockers. Anyway, we were talking about tinkering with your compatibility layer, Proton and Wine and so on. But generally, GameHub does a pretty good job of giving you the best settings straight off the bat. Although if you want the most stability, particularly for Final Fantasy VII Remake, we recommend Compatibility Layer Proton 9, GPU Driver Turnip 24.3 Revision 12, and DXVK 1.10.3 async. And whilst that may not give you super high FPS, it will give you a surprisingly smooth gameplay experience. No stuttering, but it'll get you great stability. So if you're finding your game crashing, go for those options. So we strongly recommend AJ Prefix to keep your saves safe, but the setup for AJ Prefix is the subject for another video. There are tutorials online. As for Final Fantasy VII Remake's in-game settings on the Retroid Pocket 5, set the display mode to windowed, and you won't get the black bar across the top of it if you have closed off launching in a windowed mode, as we showed you earlier, and you'll get good FPS. And in no time at all you'll be rampaging through the streets of Midgar, smashing up Shinra's hordes, and their doggies to boot. Or, if you're completely inept like me, building up to a massive attack that lands in the middle of the road and damages no one. Yeah, truly, I am a turn-based gamer. But it is very nice that in amongst all the action you can go into the menus, slow down time and choose an ill-advised attack. I learnt my lesson and sorted this guy out in double quick time. But look at the colours there on the amazing OLED screen. It really does pop. And yes, we're playing at low settings, but I'm sure you'll agree that the beauty of Final Fantasy VII Remake still shines through in this footage. And yes, this car had it coming too. The special effects in combat are truly a sight to behold as sparks fly, and Cloud's Buster Sword describes magnificent neon whirlwinds. It's fair to say that we were absolutely staggered by the quality that the Retroid Pocket 5 was able to put out for such a high-end PC game. And if this footage looks a little dark, then don't worry, you can adjust the brightness, and we do suggest having a brightness of about 6, as you may have seen in our in-game settings earlier, 6 at least, maybe even go up to 8, especially if you're going to enable the HDR function to get those beautiful reds and special effects shining through. It does make the rest of the screen a little bit dark, so toggle HDR off and pump up the brightness if you like. With super fluid gameplay, even when it did dip below 30 frames per second, we were truly astonished by Final Fantasy VII Remake on the Retroid Pocket 5, and we're tolerably sure you will be too.
It's on the house.
So emboldened were we by our success with the remake, we went for the jugular. Yakuza Like a Dragon can be had on goodoldgamesgog.com. You get the DRM free version. Always recommend getting a DRM free version of these big PC games. They are so much easier to run through Winlator and Gamehub. And yeah, the Hero Edition would be a good one. So you get the Matriarch job system. And the game requirements looked pretty good, actually. 8 gigs of RAM. The RP5's got 8 gigs. That's a nice match. The graphics don't look too heavy there. Yeah, we got the space for that too. Our CPU needs to support AVX. And sure enough, when we tried to load up Like a Dragon on Gamehub, we got an AVX error message. But we had better luck on Winlator, Bionic Ludashi, and we didn't even need to toggle the AVX option on in our bespoke Box 64 preset, as it turned out. Because miracle of miracles, yes, we got Like a Dragon to load, but it's good to know the AVX toggle is there if you need it. And need it we did in Gamehub, and you can see it here entered as an environment variable, and that did the trick to get Yakuza Like a Dragon to load. The first time it loaded was on Winlator Bionic Ludashi. We were so excited when the FPS counter popped up on the black screen to suggest that the game was loading, and then the screen froze and we thought that the loading process had crashed. And there's no way of knowing, because sometimes these big PC games can take over a minute to fully load up with no discernible change in the FPS counter. But there is one way you can check whether the game is still loading. Open your Winlator sidebar, check Task Manager, and if the game exe file is there, then the game is loading and it will eventually get there. If likeadragon.exe has disappeared from the list of tasks shown in Task Manager, then it's back to the drawing board, back to the lab again. Go and change your settings around and see if you can get a better loading result. But we did get a result and we were into the menus. Now what's great about Yakuza Like a Dragon is that of all the games we tested, it has the widest array of customization options when it comes to settings, in-game settings for your graphics and your display and so on. There's even another page of advanced settings down there. Very useful indeed. Or was it? Because even with endless fiddling with the in-game settings, although the title screen looked glorious and the opening movies played very well, the FPS was appalling. And we were able to bump it up with the usual tricks that we've already shown you, but frankly there was no salvaging Like a Dragon on Retroid Pocket 5, unfortunately. Yes, these opening movies look pretty fine, but if it can't even do these movies at a good FPS, then once you get into in-game, you're going to be in trouble. Winlator Bionic Ludashi, all settings set to low in-game, and here we have Ichiban chasing his thug quite happily down the streets of Japan. Even with everything set to low, except for the textures, you can see that the frames per second aren't great. You'll also see that the game really starts to chug, or Ichiban really is that slow at running. And it's such a shame because, yeah, the character model doesn't look so bad himself, but, you know, this is hardly a thrilling chase, is it, as we get down into single frames per second. And I would say that this is the only failure in the entire video that there's been with regards to a big PC game that's been tested and we haven't been able to get to work, or our forebears haven't been able to either. Okay, it works. They are running along, but it's like treacle soup, and the graphics look like the proverbial potato. So not great. You'll see that there should be a hurdle there. It's an invisible hurdle, although actually GameHub does a better job of presenting those in-game graphics that pop up. Bionically Dashi couldn't handle that hurdle, and there's a spurious canister that was thrown. Hardly even saw it, didn't have a chance to get out of the way, and very soon you're going to see us go past a red door. Now if you can get past the red door, you can get past quite a lot of the opening game of Like a Dragon. But could Bionically Dashi get past the red door of doom? No, it couldn't. So we were stuck here. Looking at the FPS though, if the FPS counter is still moving, you have a chance. You have a chance for the game to burst through into the next scene. And that is exactly what happened here. Because despite us being stuck next to the red door of doom and the FPS tanking and tanking, you will actually see that we do launch in to the cutscene. Miraculously, we have caught the thug. Now, this didn't happen every time. Obviously, we were tinkering with the settings each time to try and get better FPS. One time, we caught up with the thug and they just stood there, Ichiban and the thug just panting next to each other forever. 10, 20 minutes went by. We were hoping for it to break into the cutscene, and it never did. It's like the perps were just languishing in a backstreet in perpetuity, putting the perp in perpetuity, if you will. Okay, let's see if Bionically Dashi on the RP5 can handle a fight, handle a bit of fisticuffs, because in a lot of turn-based RPGs you can get away with low frames per second. And actually the fight was fine. The pop-up menus, 30 frames per second, and just about we can get through at around 15 to 18 frames per second in this fight. And the game didn't really struggle apart from that low FPS. All fine. But we were concerned about the open world. If the RP5 couldn't handle that initial chase, how was it going to be able to reliably render the rest of the back streets of the big city as Ichiban goes about his day-to-day bad business? Well, let's dispatch this peep show peddling punk and find out. Ichiban has leveled up. All very nice, and it's a game we really do want to play in good quality, but we're not sure that the Retroid Pocket 5 is the way to do it. 25 frames per second, it's not going to last. We'll get into this little cutscene here, then we'll hit the streets and see what the RP5 can manage. Will Ichiban be able to drag his ass around the mean streets at a steady frame rate? I think you can guess the answer, and I should say this is after hours, if not days, of tinkering with the various settings in the container, in Winlator, in GameHub, in the in-game settings. We'll have a little run. Single figure frames per second it goes down to. We're going to leave Like a Dragon there. Maybe you'd say all hope is lost, but maybe hope is just around the corner. Because the big secret to getting better performance out of big PC games on Retroid Pocket 5 is INI files. Now an INI file tells the game what to do and how to do it, and a graphics INI file, like the one in Yakuza Like a Dragon, can be edited, as can even the .exe file through its properties. You can also go to Nexus Mods and download mods there that can help with performance at the cost of graphics, we should say. And maybe this would help, but we have our doubts because, as we've already shown, you can massively amend the settings in-game already. And let's face it, even when we made Like a Dragon look like a badly produced PS2 game, it still had FPS that languished terribly low. So we will have to leave Like a Dragon here, but maybe you, dear viewer, will be able to get better results by accessing those INI files or downloading a mod. And talking of downloading mods, ReFantazio on Retroid Pocket 5. What an absolute beauty. Now, to get this game running well, does require importing an ini file into your Metaphor ReFantazio game folder. We will come to that in due course, but let's have a look how well we got Metaphor ReFantazio running, because it does look truly stunning on the Retroid Pocket 5. We were not huge fans of Persona 5 Royal, particularly the second half of the game, so we didn't expect to fall head over heels in love with Metaphor ReFantazio the way we have done. In fact, we're rushing to get this video out just so we can go back and play some more. We're getting FPS in the 40s here, and it all looks very nice indeed. Even though we're running Metaphor ReFantazio on the RP5 at the aforementioned 960 by 544 resolution, you can actually make out the small text very nicely, thanks in no small part due to the sharpening effects we also mentioned earlier that you can find in both Winlator and Gamehub. A real beauty, and it does look fabulous. To get it looking this fabulous, it's going to need a little bit of tinkering. You're going to need to go and download Metaphorfix. Once unzipped, Metaphorfix reveals 4 files, the most crucial of which is the metaphorfix.ini file. And using a particular file editor, you can amend the ini file to get Metaphor ReFantazio running, as well as this on the Retroid Pocket 5. Without that ini file, you'll get about half this FPS at best. So let's get stuck into the process. As usual, we'll start with Gamehub, and if you're watching earlier, you'll know that those are our favourite settings for PC games on the Retroid Pocket 5 being played through Gamehub, the most stable. There they are again. And don't forget to set, in general, the screen resolution to 960 by 544. Then Metaphor will boot up, and you go into your display settings, and it should say 960 by 544. Like it does here. Come out of that, go into graphics settings. Now the key thing to do here is set the rendering scale to 125%, and then you can come out of settings and indeed out of the game, which will remember your settings. Now it's time to get our fix, our Metaphor fix. Head over to codeberg.org/lyle/Metaphorfix, and you will find the link to get Metaphorfix 0.8.5, which is the latest and greatest. What does Metaphorfix do? It does a lot. It will help you increase your frames per second, tinker with all the settings in much more detail than you ever could in the Metaphor ReFantazio in-game settings. And also, if you're playing on a mobile phone, for instance, you can set the aspect ratio to beyond 16 by 9 to ultra wide, which means you're going to be able to see so much more of the beautiful game environments. You're going to go from this to this, and that is a great reason to think about playing Metaphor ReFantazio on your mobile phone. Essentially, you can enable an ultra-wide hack if you want to, among many other incredible features in Metaphorfix. So yes, you download the Metaphorfix 0.8.5 zip, and then you will need to unzip the contents to your game folder, the same game folder that houses your Metaphor exe file. One of the 4 files from the Metaphorfix zip download is, of course, the metaphorfix.ini file, and using an ini editor, various editors are available that you can download from the Play Store, for instance. You'll be able to get into the ini file and change the settings, and these are the settings we recommend. Let's go through them together one by one. We like to skip the intro logos and the opening movie, which plays by default, so we've set that to true. We tried various gameplay field of views, but we kept that at 1. That was the best overall. And we disabled the FPS cap, of course. Moving on, we disabled camera shake because no one likes camera shaking. And then with regard to ultra wide or narrower fixes, we didn't change that. We wanted it to be 16 by 9 because the Retroid Pocket 5 has a 16 by 9 screen. But if you're playing on a Retroid Pocket Mini, for instance, you can change the settings to allow for a true 4:3 aspect ratio. It's just great to be able to play Metaphor ReFantazio on any number of devices without there being black bars and without having to worry about your image being overly stretched. So for the Steam Deck, you can do 16 by 10. For the Retroid Pocket Mini, you can set to 4:3. It's absolutely fantastic. The other important thing that we changed was ambient occlusion. Now, ambient occlusion settings are available in the main game, but they don't seem to do very much. Here you can actually change them properly, and we recommend ambient occlusion at 0.1. Finally, set draw distance to 8, just so that you're not taxing the GPU too much. And then shadow quality can be put down at 512. There's no discernible difference between shadow quality at the default 2048, so 512 is fine, and it'll give you a good boost in FPS. We don't really understand the modern game obsession with shadows. They are all over the place in Octopath Traveler, and frankly they're quite distracting and make things hard to see, so yeah, get that shadow quality right down there. So let's boot up Metaphor, and I should say that this INI trick will only work in GameHub. Unfortunately, trying to load up the game with the INI settings in any version of Winlator does not work, but it will work in GameHub. So fingers crossed, and we will know, quite helpfully, whether the INI file has worked if there are no titles with regard to Atlas or anyone else who helped produce the game, and there's no opening movie, which plays by default interminably. I mean, it's all very nice and pretty, but it plays for a long time and you have to skip through it. So here we are, our little Tinkerbell Pixie Fairy, basically the game's version of Morgana, because yeah, Metaphor does skew pretty close to Persona 5, but we actually prefer Metaphor from what we've played. So yes, no Atlas logo, no opening movie, straight into the Metaphor ReFantazio title screen. Absolutely glorious. Now, something very important, do not go back into the settings and start messing around with the graphics again. That may well cause the RP5 to whine and splutter and hard crash, turning off the system completely. It can't cope with the instructions from the INI file being contradicted by the in-game settings. So don't go to in-game settings. You see that system option on the right? Do not tap on it. Do not change anything in there and you'll be set fair. Just stick with what you got with the INI file and you will find that you have reached a beautiful agreement with the game. Congratulations, you can now look forward to high FPS and a smooth play session of Metaphor ReFantazio on your Retroid Pocket 5. And the fantastic thing is that a lot of these PC games have their own INI file that you can go in and amend yourself to get similar results. But failing that, you can go on the internet and download something like Metaphorfix, which will make your game truly shine. Whether you're playing on Retroid Pocket 5 or any other suitable Android device. Can't find an INI file? Head to Nexus Mods. Loads of people have been here before, and they have found ways to get these games running lickety-split. What a fantastic resource. And what a fantastic games console the Retroid Pocket 5 is. If you found this video at all helpful, we would really love it if you'd like it. And we understand not all of you will subscribe, and that's fine, but plenty more where this came from if you do want to stick with us. But yeah, please do tap that like button. It would mean a lot. We have ploughed days and days into this, in darkness, wading through the settings, fighting our way back into the light, clutching high FPS and smooth as butter gameplay. All for your, and admittedly, my delectation. I can't wait to finish this video because I can't wait to get back to Metaphor ReFantazio, and as someone who fell off Persona 5 Royal badly, that truly is saying something about the ethereal beauty of this magisterial JRPG. That, frankly, has never looked better than it does on a Retroid Pocket 5. Talking of which, if you're keen to buy the wonder console that is Retroid Pocket 5, then do check out our description for an affiliate link. We do get a small cut from that, but you'll get a big discount if you use that link and our coupon code as well. As for the Retroid Pocket 5, it's hard to believe that this was a device aimed at emulating PS2 and GameCube games. Soon after release, it became apparent that it could play good swathes of Switch games. And that's the case now more than ever, thanks to the advances in the Eden emulator, which I believe has reached release candidate 3. And we do feel like the wonders of Winlator and the genius of GameHub are only now being fully revealed. And incredibly, we feel that there's much more to come. So subscribe to Hyperplay, Stick with us, because we're going to keep on following this tunnel. It can only lead to bigger and better games being playable on your Android device and our Retroid Pocket 5. Absolute fire, as the kids say, we think. Well, now we've given you the benefits of all our deep research into the glories of PC emulation on Android. What can you achieve? Whether that's on your RP5, your Odin 2, mobile phone, mind it doesn't overheat. We want to know what you have been able to get running via GameHub, via Winlator, and your settings, if you feel so inclined to share them with us and the community, because it is so much fun firing up a high-end PC game on Winlator, hoping, praying the FPS counter will pop up, and when it does, giving a big old cheer and a salute to the gods of emulation, and seeing how far you can go with these incredible PC games in the palms of your hand, on a games machine that doesn't make your muscles burn every time you pick it up. Oh, we're only joking, Steam Deck owners. We'd love to know how you get on, so please check back and fill up the comments with your awesome PC games on Android and your settings. I hope this deep dive into impossible PC games on your Retroid Pocket 5 has been an eye-opening and enlightening experience. Many thanks for watching, take care, and very happy PC gaming. Goodbye.